The clinking of glasses was supposed to be the sound of celebration. My birthday. My night. 34 years on this earth, and I thought I had done well for myself. A steady job, a home I worked hard for, and a marriage I believed was solid. But the words that followed those glasses cut sharper than any knife. You're lucky she settled for you, man. Honestly, she could do way better. The laughter that rolled around the table wasn't the light, warm kind. It was the sharp edge of mockery dressed up as humor. My wife's best friend had just humiliated me in front of everyone. And my wife? She laughed too. She leaned back in her chair, cheeks flushed from the wine, and giggled like it was the funniest thing she'd heard all night. She didn't touch my hand, didn't say, "That's not fair," didn't defend me, just laughed. I forced a smile. I even laughed a little, because what else do you do when the floor seems to tilt beneath you? You pretend. You act like you're in on the joke while your chest tightens like someone's slowly cinching a rope around it. But in that moment, behind the fake grin, behind the calm exterior, a seed was planted. And that seed was revenge. I didn't confront him then. That's what he wanted. A scene, a shouting match, proof that I was insecure. No, I clinked my glass against his, even thanked him for the toast. Outwardly, I was the picture of composure. Inwardly, my mind was racing. Because if he felt bold enough to say that in public, in front of my wife, what was he saying behind closed doors? What poison had he been dripping into her ear when I wasn't around? The thought made my stomach twist, but it also sparked something else, resolve. Later that night, when we got home, I expected my wife to apologize. To at least say, "He went too far, don't take it personally." But she didn't. Instead, she shrugged, slipped off her heels, and said, "That's just how he is. You know he jokes like that." I studied her in the dim light of our bedroom. The way her dress clung to her curves, the way her hair fell loose around her shoulders. Even after years of marriage, I still felt that pull toward her. But that night, the attraction came tangled with something darker, doubt. She saw my reflection in the mirror as I loosened my tie. "Don't let him get to you," she added, her voice calm, almost dismissive. "You're too sensitive." Sensitive. That word stung worse than the toast itself. I lay awake long after she drifted to sleep. The city hummed quietly outside, but my mind replayed the moment on a loop. His smug grin, her laughter, my own forced smile. That was the night something shifted. The next day, when I saw him again, my wife's so-called best friend, I smiled like nothing had happened. He clapped me on the shoulder, still grinning, still brimming with that fake confidence. But I had already started watching. I noticed the way he interrupted his girlfriend, correcting her in front of others as if she were a child. I noticed the way his eyes lingered on other women when she wasn't looking, the waitress at the cafe, the woman jogging past when we sat on the patio. His gaze was hungry, restless. And I noticed something else. My wife never called him out. Not once. That week, at another gathering, his girlfriend sat quietly beside him while he dominated every conversation. She smiled when he told stories, laughed when he made jokes, even when they weren't funny. She leaned toward him like she was desperate for scraps of attention. I caught her eyes once across the table. For just a second. They were tired, sad, almost pleading. And that's when it hit me. He wasn't just toxic to me. He was toxic to her too. Suddenly, the idea of revenge wasn't just about reclaiming my pride. It was about exposing him for what he really was. I didn't know how yet. But I knew this. He had cracks in his armor. And all I had to do was wait for the right moment to strike. I didn't have to wait long. One night, after a few too many drinks, he pulled me aside with his usual smug grin. "You know she's out of your league, right?" he said, eyes glinting with arrogance. She settled for comfort. Stability, not passion. The word passion lingered in the air between us. His tone was mocking, but something in the way he said it, low, almost taunting, stirred a heat in my chest. Not attraction to him, but anger mixed with something raw, something primal. Because passion was what I did have with my wife. Or at least, what I thought we had. Nights tangled together, whispers in the dark, her body pressed against mine. But lately, had that changed? My mind replayed her laugh at the dinner table. Her silence when he mocked me again. The tension between us had shifted, and I wasn't sure if it was in my head or if she had already started pulling away. I went home that night restless, pacing the apartment while my wife brushed her hair in front of the mirror. She looked beautiful in that casual, unintentional way that still got to me. Silk camisole, bare legs curled under her on the chair. She caught my stare in the reflection. "What?" she asked softly, her lips quirking into a faint smile. I wanted to tell her everything. How humiliated I felt. How angry I was. How much I still wanted her despite it all. Instead, I just said, nothing. Because this wasn't the time to confess. This was the time to plan. The next morning I woke up before dawn, the apartment still and gray, my wife breathing softly beside me. I lay there staring at the ceiling, counting the seconds between her breaths, wondering when exactly I had started timing my life around someone else's laughter. The memory of that toast felt like a bruise on my ribs, tender when I pressed it, ugly when I looked too long. I promised myself I wouldn't press it. Instead, I would learn where to land the next hit. At breakfast, she wore one of my shirts, sleeves rolled past her wrists, bare legs brushing my knee as she reached for the coffee. Heat pulsed low in my stomach. She smiled without looking up, unaware of the small storm she caused by simply existing in my space. I wanted to tell her she was beautiful, that she still made me ache, that we could fix whatever had shifted. But the image of her laughing at his joke flashed like a warning light. My hand closed around the mug, and the words cooled on my tongue. His messages started early. A meme, a half-joke, a fishing line thrown to see if I'd bite. I answered with bland thumbs-ups and LOLs, the friendly mask snug on my face. He suggested a group hang Friday. His girlfriend would be busy. Another tug on the line. I told him I'd check with my wife and let him know. That evening we met a few friends at a wine bar with soft lighting and tall windows. He arrived late, swaggering in like a home team after a win. His girlfriend trailed behind, pretty and quiet, the kind of quiet that comes from habit, not peace. He kissed her cheek without looking at her. When the server came, he ordered for her, a tone too familiar to be romantic. She smiled politely, eyes darting to the menu as if anyone would let her read it. I watched them more than I should have. The way he used touch as punctuation, hand on her shoulder when she spoke too long, palm at her elbow when he wanted her to move. The way his attention drifted to the server's necklace, then to the server herself. My wife didn't notice, or she pretended not to. She was laughing at a story from someone else, head thrown back, the soft curve of her throat bare beneath the pendant I gave her last anniversary. I felt possessive and ashamed of feeling possessive, two horses pulling in opposite directions under my ribs. Later, while people stood to greet new arrivals, his girlfriend stayed seated beside me. Her voice, when it came, was small but steady. "He really likes you," she said, as if that were reassurance, as if being liked by him meant safety. "Does he?" I asked too lightly. She nodded, then looked down at her hands. After a moment she added, almost apologizing, "He just performs sometimes. It's his way." "And you?" I said. "Do you get to perform?" A tiny shrug. "I get to keep the peace." She lifted her chin and smiled. Brave, brittle, practiced. I wanted to tell her she didn't have to hold a collapsing ceiling by herself. Instead, I excused myself for the restroom and stood in the hallway until my pulse settled. When I returned, I caught my wife and him at the bar, close enough that his breath could have fogged the rim of her glass. She laughed at something he said, a laugh I used to think belonged to me, soft, private, a little dangerous. He touched the pendant with 2 fingers, admiring, and for an absurd second jealousy bit so hard I tasted metal. Then she noticed me, stepped back a fraction, and the air reset. She came to my side, slipped her hand into my elbow. Her skin was warm. I couldn't tell if she did it for me or for show. We walked home in a hush that felt like snowfall, gentle but cold. Halfway up the stairs, she brushed past me, and the side of her hip grazed mine. I caught her by the rail, purely reflex, palm at her waist. She paused, breath a shade faster. For a heartbeat we stood there, suspended, her lips parted, my thumb resting against the silk of her shirt, the hall light humming above us. Desire moved through me like a low current. Then her phone vibrated. She looked at the screen, and the moment broke. "It's him," she said, already typing. He forgot where we parked. She slipped away with a murmured good night, and the rail cooled under my hand. The next days I became a student of patterns. He texted more when he was bored, less when he was entertained. His girlfriend posted photos with careful captions about gratitude. He used the word bro when he wanted something and my name when he wanted to wound. I started saving things. Nothing dramatic, just threads I might later pull. screenshots of his flirty comments under strangers' pictures, a voice memo he sent at 2 a.m., slurring through a story about options, a calendar invite he forwarded that oddly overlapped with a work dinner he bragged about. On Thursday he pinged, Friday's still on. She's at her sister's. Boys' night. I suggested the lounge near the river, the one with mirrored pillars and a balcony that made people feel invisible. He agreed too fast. Friday came with the sticky heat of late summer. My wife stood at the mirror, lining her eyes, asking if her dress was too much for dinner with friends. It wasn't. It was exactly enough. I wanted to trace the line where silk met skin, to inhale the citrus at her wrists, to tell her I wanted her, still and completely. Instead, I said she looked perfect and kissed her temple. She smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. Don't let him get under your skin, she said, and I wondered if she meant him or herself. At the lounge, he was already at the bar, alone, nursing a drink that looked like it wanted to be photographed. He clapped me into a side hug, breath sweet and sharp. Freedom, he said, like a teenager whose parents had left town. We moved through the room in a lazy circuit, his attention flicking from face to face like a spotlight. Every time a woman laughed, his posture changed, chin higher, shoulders wider, a body auditioning for a role he assumed he deserved. I played along. I laughed when he needed me to, asked questions that made him talk more, let the room forget I existed when he grew louder. An hour in, a brunette with a comet of glitter at her collarbone appeared at his elbow. He leaned in. She leaned back, amused, not displeased. He tilted his glass toward the balcony. She followed. I waited. Not long, just long enough to be certain. Then I drifted after them, slow and aimless, as if I were looking for cleaner air. The mirrored pillar near the balcony gave me their reflection without asking permission. His hand found her waist. Her laugh softened. He glanced around, careless, greedy. I lifted my phone. The camera didn't click. The city hissed below like a secret. This was not the scene I wanted to make. This was the scene I wanted to keep. Proof is quiet. Proof is patient. Proof lets the truth speak in its own voice. Behind me, somewhere inside, my wife's laugh rose and fell like a song I used to know the words to. I breathed once, steady and deep, and pressed record. I didn't sleep that night. The video I recorded sat in my phone like a live wire, humming against my thoughts. I lay in bed next to my wife, her body turned away from me, her breathing steady. She had no idea I'd caught her best friend pressed against another woman, his hands greedy, his lips reckless. The irony wasn't lost on me. Hours earlier, he'd been making the same tired joke, that she could do better than me. And now I had proof of who he really was. But proof is only as powerful as timing. If I moved too early, it would be brushed off as pettiness, jealousy, insecurity. I needed patience. I needed him to dig his own grave a little deeper. So I kept quiet. The next morning, over coffee, my wife asked if I had fun the night before. I studied her face, the faint shadow of tiredness under her eyes, the way she fiddled with the handle of her mug. She looked beautiful in the morning light, hair messy, lips still soft with sleep. Desire flickered, uninvited. It felt almost cruel that I could want her and resent her in the same breath. I had a good time, I said evenly. What about you? She smiled faintly. Yeah, it was nice. Her phone buzzed on the counter. His name lit up the screen. She reached for it quickly, typing fast, as if my noticing would mean something. That small, sharp twist of doubt returned to my chest. The following days I played my part. I kept responding to his texts, acting like the friendly guy he could confide in. He bragged more than usual, careless, boastful. It was almost too easy. One night he sent me a voice message, his words slurred with alcohol. Man, some women are just options, you know? Keep your girl happy, but never stop looking. I saved it. Another thread for the rope. The tension between me and my wife became its own silent game. She'd laugh too easily at his jokes when we were all out together. She'd defend him when I rolled my eyes. But then, at night, she'd curl against me in bed, her skin warm, her hand brushing mine in ways that still made my pulse stumble. One evening, she came out of the shower wrapped in a towel, steam clinging to her skin. I caught myself staring at the curve of her shoulder, the droplets racing down her back, the way the towel clung dangerously low at her chest. She noticed my gaze and smirked, a flicker of the woman I used to know. But then her phone buzzed on the dresser again. His name. The spell broke. That weekend, we went to a small dinner party at a mutual friend's place. He was there, of course, girlfriend in tow, looking tired, the strain visible around her smile. I watched them carefully. He barely acknowledged her, more interested in dominating the room. My wife sat close to him, laughing at his stories, her hand brushing his arm once, maybe twice. She didn't notice me watching, but his girlfriend did. Later, as we cleared plates in the kitchen, she leaned toward me. Her voice was quiet, almost hesitant. Does he ever say things to you? About her? Her eyes flicked toward my wife in the other room. For a second, I froze. The urge to spill everything, to hand her the video, surged up like a wave. But not yet. Timing. Always timing. Instead, I gave her a neutral smile. He says a lot of things. Her lips pressed into a thin line. Yeah, he does. We exchanged a look. Not an alliance yet, but the hint of one. On the drive home, my wife was quiet. Her fingers tapped against the door absent-mindedly, her gaze out the window. When we pulled into the driveway, she turned to me suddenly. Why do you always look at him like that? She asked. Like what? Like you're waiting for him to mess up. I held her stare. For a long moment, the air between us thickened. There was tension there, not just anger, but the kind of tension that made my heart race for more than one reason. Attraction and resentment tangled together, messy and unresolvable. Finally, I said, because he already has. She frowned, searching my face for meaning, but I didn't give her more. I just got out of the car and left her sitting there, her confusion trailing me like smoke. That night, I opened my phone again, watched the video once more. His hand on another woman's waist, his lips pressed against hers, his arrogance spilling over like wine. Proof is patient, I reminded myself. And so was I. The first sound was a laugh. Not the wild kind from a bar, but the private kind people save for kitchens after midnight. I had come home late from a client dinner, tie loose, pulse still running on coffee. The lights were low. Our place smelled like citrus and something warm she must have baked. I set my keys down as quietly as I could. The laugh came again, from the balcony. I should have cleared my throat, made noise, announced myself. Instead, I drifted toward the glass door and stopped just shy of the curtain. The night pressed cool against the pane. Their voices carried like threads. You don't have to keep defending him, he said. His tone had that smooth glide he saved for persuading people. Comfort isn't the same as happiness. My wife's voice came softer. You think I don't know that? Silence. The kind that isn't empty, but crowded. He said, you could have more. I felt something hard settle under my ribs. I inched the curtain a fraction. They weren't touching. They stood with a respectable gap between them, city lights spangling across her hair. My wife looked out at the street, arms folded, chin tipped down like she didn't trust her own mouth. More what? She asked. More life, he said. More spark. Spark. The word stung because I remembered it. The way she used to say it after we moved in together, the way we used to grab each other in hallways just because we could, laughter caught between kisses and the promise of more. I remembered the weight of her thigh across mine, the way my name sounded in her voice when the world fell away. I remembered all of it, and still, I stayed behind the curtain. I listened. She breathed out. You can be cruel, you know. Honest, he corrected, the smirk audible. He's a good man, but good isn't enough for you. I watched her hand lift to the pendant at her throat, the one I'd given her, and for a second my body reacted before my brain did. A flash of possessive heat, a memory of my fingers resting where hers were now. The tug of attraction arrived twisted with anger, a wire pulled tight. Stop, she said finally. Don't make this about him. Then make it about you, he murmured. When was the last time you felt alive? He didn't say the word I thought he might. ***, and I was grateful for small mercies. But the question hung there like an open window. She didn't answer. The air shifted. Then her phone chimed on the table. She glanced at it, wordless, and the moment snapped. Chair scraped. Footsteps. I moved back down the hall, threw the fridge door open, and pretended to be very interested in cold water when they came inside. Hey, she said, surprised. A touch of color rose to her cheeks. You're home. Traffic. I lied, drinking like a man who needed the glass as a shield. He clapped my shoulder, easy as a brother. You missed a good sunset, he said. Looks like, I replied. After he left, the apartment felt larger and emptier at once. She lingered at the counter, tracing circles on the marble with her finger. I wanted to ask what he'd said and what she had almost said back. Instead, I asked stupid things about her day, watched the way her mouth moved around the word fine, and felt the ache of wanting her touch my arm in a way that wasn't gentle, wasn't careful, wasn't distant. Later, in our bedroom, she stood in lamplight and peeled her earrings off. The line of her neck drew my eyes, and something low in me answered. I crossed the space, set my hands at her hips, waiting for her body to decide if I belonged there. She didn't pull away. She leaned, barely, into me. Her breath changed. I smelled lavender and heat. My thumb found the fabric's edge, and the room tilted towards something we hadn't touched in too long. Then she said, without turning, "Do you ever feel like we're paused?" The word floated between us like dust in the light. My hand stilled. Paused. Like we keep hitting play on the old version of us, she said. And it's glitching. I let my hands fall. "I think we're tired," I said carefully. Her reflection in the mirror looked tired. Mine looked like a man pretending to be fine. The moment slipped away, not with a slam, but with a slow sigh. She kissed my cheek, tender, grateful, distant. We slept touching ankles and nothing else. The next afternoon, I picked up takeout and headed to her office to surprise her. The receptionist waved me through. Everyone knew me there, and I stopped when I heard her voice down the hallway, lowered, urgent. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. It happened the way tripping happens. One wrong step and gravity handles the rest. "You can't keep saying those things," she whispered. "Not to me. It's not fair." His voice, softer than the balcony, slid through the crack in the door. "I'm saying them because no one else will." "You think you're saving me?" She let out a small, incredulous laugh that cracked in the middle. "You're pushing me." "To what?" "To admit what you already feel." A beat. "He's holding you in place." I had never felt less hypothetical. My heart did that rabbit thing, fast and useless. I imagined barging in, imagined throwing the takeout on the desk, and asking if I tasted like a pause too. Instead, I backed away, stood at the end of the hall until my breathing sounded human, then walked in as if I'd just arrived. She blinked, startled. "You didn't text." "Wanted to surprise you," I said, lifting the bags. He smiled, relaxed, as if the world were a stage he knew the exits to. I placed lunch on her desk, met his eyes, and held them a fraction longer than polite. He was the first to look away. We ate together, the three of us, like a portrait of modern civility. He told a story about a meeting. She listened with that tilted head that means she's present and miles away. I chewed and counted the seconds. When he finally left, she exhaled, long and shaky. Her hand found mine across the desk and squeezed. "Thank you," she said. "For lunch." "For showing up," I said. Her eyes lifted to mine, and for a moment the room narrowed to the scent of her skin and the memory of every night we'd ever closed a door and let the world fall off. Attraction rolled through me, clean and bright. I squeezed back. She didn't let go. That night, I opened the file on my phone again. The balcony video played silently, city lights pulsing like a heartbeat. Proof waited, patient and cold. But something else had joined it now, something I didn't want. Doubt about whether I was hunting one man or trying to save someone who didn't want saving. I set the phone down. The apartment was quiet. From the bathroom came the sound of water hitting tile. I pictured her mouth parted under steam, the line of her spine curving into shadow. My body answered, traitor and truth-teller both. I walked to the door, raised my hand to knock, and stopped. On the counter, her phone lit up with his name. I let my knuckles fall to my side. Outside, a siren wailed and thinned into distance. Inside, I finally admitted I had crossed a line from anger into strategy. I had things I wasn't meant to hear. I would collect more. I would wait. Timing isn't just about when to strike. It's about what you want to save when the dust settles. The night I caught him kissing that woman on the balcony replayed in my mind like a scene I couldn't stop watching. Proof sat in my pocket every day, humming like a secret. It should have been enough. But proof isn't just about possession. Proof is about presentation. I wasn't going to waste it on a petty argument. I needed the moment to be undeniable, the kind that flipped the entire table upside down and left no room for excuses. So I waited. One evening, a week later, my wife was curled on the couch, scrolling through her phone, when she said, "We should all do another dinner soon. It's been a while." Her voice was casual, like she was suggesting movie night. But my heart picked up. The last dinner had left me humiliated. This one could become my stage. I forced a smile. Sure. Invite him. Invite her too. She looked up at me with a flicker of surprise. Really? I thought you didn't enjoy his company. Oh, I enjoy it plenty, I said. It's always entertaining. Her brow furrowed, but she let it go. The following week, the dinner was set. Same group, same mix of friends, but this time his girlfriend was coming. I knew because I made sure of it. I prepared myself the way a soldier prepares before battle. Not with weapons, but with calm. I practiced the look I'd wear when I showed the video. Not smug, not angry, just steady, truthful. The kind of look no one could dismiss as insecurity. The night of the dinner, I chose my seat carefully. Across from him, diagonal from his girlfriend, next to my wife. The restaurant buzzed with laughter and clinking glasses, but all I heard was the steady beat of my own pulse. He was in fine form, as always. Stories exaggerated for effect, arms thrown wide, laughter that demanded the room bend around it. My wife laughed along, her hand brushing his arm once in a way that made something inside me twist. Then, like clockwork, halfway through the meal, he struck. Man, I still don't know how you convinced her to marry you, he said with a smirk. She's way out of your league. The table chuckled. My wife gave a small roll of her eyes, but said nothing. Again, I leaned back, smiled, and let my voice cut through the noise. Speaking of leagues, hey, girlfriend's name, I've got something you should see. The table stilled. She blinked at me, uncertain. He froze, grin faltering just slightly. I pulled out my phone, pressed play. The screen lit up with the video. Him, on the balcony, hands on another woman's waist, lips locked. The city behind them glittered like it was mocking him. For a moment, no one moved. No one breathed. Then she pushed back her chair. Quietly. No screaming, no dramatics. Just stood, napkin slipping from her lap, eyes pale with shock. She didn't even look at him. She just walked out. The silence that followed was heavier than any laughter I'd endured. He scrambled, stammering, "Wait, it's not. She's just a friend. It's not what it looks like." But the words tumbled out hollow, useless. My wife sat frozen beside me, her face drained of color. The other friends avoided eye contact, suddenly fascinated by their plates. I took a slow sip of my drink. Funny thing about leagues, I said softly, sometimes people don't know which one they actually belong in. The aftermath was chaos. He bolted after her, leaving behind a mess of excuses. The table erupted in whispers. My wife sat stiff, staring at me as if she didn't recognize me. On the drive home, she finally spoke. Her voice was tight. That was cruel. I glanced at her. Cruel is what he's been doing to both of us for years. I just returned the favor. She shook her head. You didn't have to destroy his relationship. Her words landed sharper than she realized. Not because of what she said, but because of what she didn't say. Not once did she mention me. Not once did she say, "Thank you for standing up for yourself." That was when the real crack opened. That night, as she slipped into bed without touching me, I stared at the ceiling and realized the truth. I had exposed him. But in doing so, I had exposed something else. She wasn't angry at his betrayal. She was angry at me for showing it. And that, somehow, was worse than the toast at my birthday. The morning after the dinner felt like stepping into a room where the picture frames were still crooked from an earthquake. Nothing looked broken, but nothing sat right. My wife moved through the kitchen in careful silence, measuring coffee like it might explode. When I reached for the mug beside her, our fingers brushed. A spark, small, stubborn, jumped under my skin. She pulled her hand back as if the mug were hot. You blindsided him, she said finally, not turning. And her. I showed the truth, I answered. They were the ones hiding. That's not the point, she said, voice tight. You humiliated him. He humiliated me for months, I said, softer than I felt. Years, if we're being generous. She set the spoon down. Metal on marble. You could have handled it privately. Would he ever stop in private? She lifted her eyes then, clear, angry, wounded. Something in me reached for her, and something else stepped back. We stood there in a space that used to be simple, holding two different versions of fairness. By lunch, the text started. Friends asking what happened, one or two pretending not to know, fishing for a cleaner story. I ignored them. His messages came in a flurry, accusation, then pleading, then the swaggering threat. You made a mistake, bro. She won't like what this turns into. I screenshotted and archived them all. That evening, my wife said she was going for a walk to clear her head. She left without asking if I wanted to come. When the door closed, the apartment folded into that heavy quiet again, like the space after applause, when you realize the show is over and you don't know where to go next. I didn't go through her phone. I didn't need to. I started with the things he'd forgotten the world can see. Public comments, tagged photos, old stories that people assume disappear, but don't really. A pattern emerged. The same women who laughed too hard at his jokes in person posted careful captions later. So grateful for clarity. Learning my worth. Under them, his half-slick comments. Always here for you. We should celebrate soon. He played savior and hunter with the same hands. Then came the part that made my stomach pitch. A photo from last winter. Our living room. Our couch. He'd posted it as a throwback during a snow day. The caption some faux deep line about where warmth lives. Zoomed in, barely there, was the edge of my wife's knee. Familiar. Intimate in a way that wasn't scandalous, but felt like trespass. I remembered that night. The blanket, the movie we didn't finish, the way she fell asleep on my shoulder. The camera must have clicked before or after. Had he been practicing ownership even then? When she returned, cheeks bright from the cold, she looked surprised to see me at the table with my laptop closed. "Did you eat?" I asked. "Not hungry," she said. She moved to pass me. I caught her wrist without thinking. Warm pulse under skin. She went still. "Why are you protecting him?" I asked. "I'm not," she said too quickly. "You're angry at me for showing who he is." She swallowed. Then the truth leaked out. "I'm angry you did it like that." "For him," I said. "Or for you?" Her breath hitched. For a second I saw everything. Panic, guilt, affection, history, passed through her eyes like weather. She eased her wrist out of my hand. Not a yank, not a fight. "I need time." Time. The word felt both generous and fatal. That night, I lay awake listening to the small sounds she made while turning in sleep. I thought about the balcony, about the laugh I'd heard from her when he leaned too close, about the way she still pulled my body toward hers in the dark, like her muscle memory refused to update. Desire and distance kept trading places until the ceiling blurred. 2 days later, his girlfriend texted me from an unknown number. "Can we talk?" We met at a coffee shop by the park, the kind with plants in the windows and patient baristas. She looked like someone who had cried efficiently. No smeared mascara, just a careful stillness. "Thank you," she said first, surprising me, "for not making me feel crazy." "You're not," I said. "I'm sorry you had to see it like that." "Public humiliation fits him," she said, and a corner of her mouth lifted with a hardness I recognized in myself. "But it doesn't fit you. Did you do it for you or for me?" "Both," I said. "And for the truth." She nodded as if that made something easier. Then she lowered her voice. "He told me things. About your wife. About chemistry. Boundaries." I didn't want to believe it. My heart did that useless rabbit thing again. "Did he say anything specific?" "Nothing that would stand up in court," she said. "But enough to smell like smoke." We parted with a promise to share anything important. As I walked home, the wind peeled at my coat, and everything felt too bright. At a crosswalk, I pulled out my phone and scrolled through old messages between my wife and him. The ones she'd shown me in easier months, the playful banter, the "you two are ridiculous" group chat jokes. Nothing explicit. But the subtext read louder now, like a lyric you finally understand. That night, I cooked her favorite dinner. She watched me chop, her gaze softening. When I set the plate in front of her, our fingers touched again. This time neither of us moved away. "I miss us," I said. She blinked. "I do too." "Then choose us," I said, gentle but not weak. "Not the idea of someone who wants you to believe you're missing something he sells." Her eyes shone. She reached up and pressed her palm against my cheek. Heat surged through me. Real, clean, not performative. The kitchen blurred at the edges. She leaned in, mouth close enough that her breath sketched along my skin. My name almost slipped out of her. I felt it, the way I used to feel the start of a storm. Then her phone lit the counter. His name again. The spell thinned like sugar in hot water. She pulled back, shame and habit writ clear. "I should. I'll tell him to stop." "Will you?" I asked. She stared at the screen for a long beat, then turned it face down without replying. Small mercy. Small war. Later, when the house slept, I opened my laptop and started a folder labeled with the most boring word I could think of: notes. Into it went the balcony video, the screenshots, a timeline that proved more than a mood. Not because I wanted to destroy lives for sport, but because I had finally admitted two things: the truth needed a stage, and some part of my life might require a courtroom. Before I shut the lid, I typed one last line into the timeline. Dinner, humiliation ends. Then, under it, a new entry. Next, exposure isn't the end. It's a door. In the dark, I listened to her breathing shift towards sleep. I rolled toward her, not touching, but near. The distance was smaller than last week, larger than last year. I lay there thinking about timing, about grace, about how attraction can be a bridge or a trap. When she stirred and unconsciously curled a foot over mine, I let myself hope for a second. In the morning, I'd find more than smoke. I'd look for the fire. 2 days after the dinner, the apartment felt like a museum of almosts. Almost said, almost done, almost forgiven. My wife brewed coffee like she was defusing a device. I set out mugs. We moved around each other the way dancers do when the song has changed, but the choreography hasn't caught up. He texted. She said finally, eyes on the kettle. I know, I said. He texted me too. First bluster, then charity. He's very versatile when he's cornered. Her jaw tightened. He says you blindsided him. I did, I said. Because any other way. He laughs and you laugh, and I learn how quiet a person can feel in a crowded room. She flinched at that, then recovered. He wants to meet. To clear the air. With you? I asked. With both of us, she said too quickly. It doesn't have to be war. It already was, I said. I just stopped pretending the bullets were confetti. The kettle clicked off. Steam ghosted between us. For a second we stood too close, and the old current found my skin, her shampoo, the soft warmth at the hollow of her throat, the memory of how my name sounds in her mouth when the world narrows. My hand almost rose of its own accord. Almost. She stepped back. You can't forbid me from seeing him. I'm not, I said. I'm setting a boundary. He doesn't come into our home anymore. Her eyes sharpened. You don't get to control my friends. I get to defend my house, I said, even, and my marriage. That word hung there. Marriage, like a bell no one was sure they wanted to ring. By lunch, our friends' group chat had morphed into a debate about public accountability. He posted something vague about betrayal and grace. Hearts trickled in from people who didn't know us, applause from the balcony seats of the internet. I closed the app. The performance wasn't for me. That afternoon, while looking for tape in the hall cabinet, I found a thin package wedged behind a stack of old manuals. A paperback. Inside the cover, in his handwriting, for Spark. Hey, it was dated 2 months after our wedding. The book was a novel about people who confuse chaos with love. I brought it to the kitchen. When did you get this? Her face changed in tiny ways, like a time-lapse of weather. Years ago. It's just a book. With a message, I said. It was a joke, she said. We used to swap recommendations. I said, and heard how tired I sounded. We didn't speak for a while. The apartment filled with small noises, the refrigerator hum, traffic outside, the thin, steady beat of our two lives trying not to collide. Then she said, I'll meet him at the cafe on 3rd. Public. Daylight. You can come if you want. I'll pass, I said. But I'll ask one thing. She looked up. If he starts selling you a story about who I am, ask yourself who benefits. Her mouth pressed into a line. Sometimes the version of you he sells is the one you show me. That landed. I watched her grab her coat and leave, heart banging like it wanted to run after her and drag her back and also open the door wider. I did none of it. I walked to the river instead. The air was brittle and bright. A runner passed, breath clouding behind her. I sat and replayed what I knew. His pattern of charm, his girlfriend's tired smile, the balcony, the inscription, the way my wife's phone lit up at inconvenient angles. I told myself I trusted her. I told myself trust does not mean silence. I told myself too many things that sounded noble and felt like stalling. On my way home, I cut down 3rd. I told myself it was a coincidence. It wasn't. Through the cafe window I saw them. My wife in the corner, hands around a cup, posture guarded. Him leaning in, palms open like a priest, eyes bright with mission. I stood outside, just far enough to be anonymous, and watched a scene with a script I could guess line by line. He talked. She listened. He touched the table. She didn't touch back. He laughed that soft, private laugh. She shook her head. Once, his hand slid toward hers, and her fingers lifted by instinct, then withdrew, as if remembering a rule. It wasn't a betrayal. It was worse. Intimacy rehearsed enough times to look natural, refused at the last second by someone who still remembered her vows. I left before the credits. At home I sat with the book again, thumbing the inscription until the paper softened under my skin. When she returned, dusk was threading through the blinds. "How was church?" I asked. She blew out a breath and sank onto the arm of a chair. "He apologized. Sort of. Said he goes too far to make a point. Said he wants me to be happy. Said you're—" She stopped. "Say it," I said. "Comfortable," she finished, like swallowing a thorn. I nodded. "And did you tell him comfort is what two people build after they've survived fire?" She rubbed her temples. "He says you're collecting evidence. He says you're not trying to fix us. You're trying to win." "I want to win us," I said. "I'm sorry if the way I've gone about it makes me look like a lawyer. He's been prosecuting me for months. I learned the language." Silence again. She stood and crossed the room. When she stopped in front of me, she smelled like cold air and coffee and the faintest trace of the lotion I'd bought her last winter. She set her hands on my shoulders. The touch was careful, then warmer. "I don't want to lose you," she said, voice barely there. Heat moved through me, clean, bright, not the angry current of the past weeks. I rose into her hands. Her mouth hovered near mine, not a kiss yet, but the idea of one. "Then choose me," I murmured. "Choose us." Her eyes closed. For a heartbeat we were not paused. Then her phone lit the room from the table. His name. The light broke across her cheekbone like a blade. She stepped back. "I'll tell him not tonight," she said, already reaching. I caught her wrist, gentle. "Don't tell him not tonight. Tell him not anymore." We stood there at the line I had drawn. She looked down at my hand, then up at my face. "I don't know if I can say that." First twist, delivered without ceremony. My wife wasn't just angry about the way I exposed him. She couldn't let him go. I released her. "Then I'll say what I can," I said. "Counseling. Boundaries. No more private meetings. And no more lies by omission." She nodded, small and slow, like someone learning to use a limb after an accident. "Okay," she said. "Counseling. A beat. Boundaries." "Good," I said. "Because I'm not done." She blinked. "With what?" "Finding the fire," I said, "and deciding what we rebuild after it burns." Counseling was her idea, boundaries were mine, and the first appointment sat on the calendar like a bandage we hadn't earned yet. In the days leading up to it, we moved carefully, like people carrying a pane of glass through a crowded room. No sudden turns. No jokes we couldn't take back. I cooked more. She lingered longer beside me while I chopped, our elbows grazing like accidents that wanted to be intentions. Some nights we even laughed. Thin threads, but threads all the same. On Tuesday, I woke before dawn to the glow of her phone on the nightstand. A calendar reminder, third floor conference room, 8:30. Nothing sinister. Yet the pulse in my throat ticked faster, memory reacting before logic, balconies, inscriptions, conversations I wasn't supposed to hear. I stared at the ceiling and asked myself a cruel question. Was I collecting proof to protect us, or to be right? The answer I didn't want. Both. At lunch, I met his ex now officially, at the same coffee shop by the park. She looked lighter, the kind of light that comes from telling the truth to yourself out loud. She slid her phone across the table. "He forgot to revoke my access to the shared album," she said. "Not photos, just screenshots he stashes like trophies." My stomach tightened. There weren't hundreds, but there were enough. Flirty threads, winks disguised as harmless, a dozen small trespasses arranged like stepping stones. One thread punched harder than the others. His message to a friend, "She's married to comfort." I'm just reminding her of Spark. Attached, a photo of a pendant, my pendant, glittering at her throat, cropped close. No faces, just a throat, a chain, a claim. I sent the image to my boring folder labeled Notes and thanked the universe for neutral file names. That night, my wife came home with wind in her hair and the scent of rain on her coat. She found me at the table with 2 plates ready and a candle burning low enough to be brave, but not foolish. She smiled. The real kind, the kind that starts in the eyes. "This feels like us," she said, sliding into her chair. "It could be," I said, "if we both want it." We ate slowly. We talked about the counselor's intake form and laughed at the clinical language for messy things. Intimacy, We both glanced away, conflict styles, attachment histories. When she reached for the salt, her wrist brushed my fingers and heat moved through me like a match catching. Her breath hitched. For a moment the room narrowed to the space between our mouths, to thick as a memory in the air without needing a single explicit word. My hand rose, almost of its own accord, to the line of her jaw. Then a vibration buzzed across the counter. Not his name this time, just unknown. She flinched. I lowered my hand. The candle guttered and steadied. "I hate this," she said, voice small. "I hate how every sound feels like a decision." "Then let's decide," I said. "Together." She nodded, but something in her eyes stayed cautious, like a door swung mostly shut for weather. The next morning at counseling, we sat on a couch that had seen other couples who believed in furniture more than they believed in themselves. The therapist had the calm gaze of someone who has learned not to jump at alarms. We told the story in turns. When we got to the dinner, my birthday toast, the public exposure, my wife's hands twisted in her lap. "He makes me feel awake," she said softly, and the word awake slid between my ribs like ice. "But I don't want chaos. I want us. If there's still an us." "There is," I said, too quickly, as if speed could make it true. "Wanting," the therapist said, "is a verb you practice." She gave us homework, phone-free hours, shared walks, a list of things we chose each other for. The list should have been easy. It felt like running in sand. Afterward, we walked home without touching, both rehearsing things we weren't ready to say. At our building, she reached for my hand. I let her take it. The contact was small and electric, a tiny bridge thrown across a river that had gotten wider when we weren't looking. In the elevator, she leaned into my shoulder, and my name almost left her lips. Almost. That afternoon, while she napped on the couch, all soft breath and tangled hair, a picture of the person I had promised in a room full of witnesses, I went to the hall closet for a blanket and found a paper bag tucked behind board games. Inside, a lighter, a matchbook from the lounge with mirrored pillars, and a folded receipt. My chest went hollow as a bell. The receipt was from the week of my birthday. 2 drinks. Bar balcony. A timestamp that overlapped with the night he'd swung by to drop off a book. I stood there, every part of me lit, but cold. This was not the proof I wanted, not yet. But it was a breadcrumb on a trail my gut had been tracing in the dark for months. When she woke, she found me on the rug with the receipt on the coffee table. No accusation, just an artifact between us. Her face went from sleep-soft to wary in a breath. "Where did you?" "Closet," I said. "Behind Scrabble." "I kept it because I hate that lounge," she said, too fast. "As a reminder not to go back." "Then why hide it?" I asked, gentle as I could manage. She looked at the window instead of me. "Because I didn't want to fight." The truth was in the room with us. Not a confession, not an exoneration, but something human and slippery that leaned toward both. We sat there for a long time, 2 people who knew what honesty should sound like, struggling to translate it into our own language. That night, she came to bed in one of my shirts and nothing else. She climbed under the covers and curled into me like a homing bird. Her thigh hooked over mine. Her breath warmed my throat. This wasn't apology. It was gravity. My hands remembered their map. She arched, and the air filled with everything we hadn't said. When our mouths found each other, it wasn't fireworks. It was a match caught at last, a small, fierce flame. We pulled apart before it burned too hot, both of us shaken by how easily the old circuitry still lit. "I want us," she whispered in the dark. "Then we have to choose us," I whispered back. Every time. She was quiet. Then, "I'm trying." The next morning, the ex sent one more screenshot. "Tell me you're not still thinking about that night," he'd written, weeks after my birthday. A reply from a contact saved without a name, just a heart. The message said, "I'm thinking about the fallout." My lungs forgot how to work for a second. It wasn't proof, but it was the edge of it, bright and sharp. I saved it to notes and stared at the wall until the paint patterns looked like maps. Digging deeper had stopped being a strategy and become a necessity. The second twist waited somewhere just past the line I hadn't crossed. I could feel it the way you feel thunder before it speaks. I closed my eyes and asked the hardest question again. When the fire finally showed itself, would I be the one to put it out, or the one to walk away and let what needed to burn, burn? The week after counseling felt ordinary in a way that made me suspicious of comfort. We did the homework, walks after dinner, phones face down, Questions that sounded simple and landed heavy. What did you notice about me today? I noticed the way her voice softened when she said my name. I noticed the way my stomach nodded when her phone lit the room. I noticed that wanting and trusting are cousins who don't always speak. On Thursday morning, our joint card statement arrived. The monthly email I usually ignore until late fees start clearing their throat. I opened it out of habit, half distracted, coffee cooling by my wrist. Line after line, groceries, utilities, a florist I didn't recognize. And then, Harborview Hotel, lobby bar, time-stamped the week of my birthday, early evening. I stared at the screen until the numbers steadied. Harborview, the same riverfront block as the lounge with the mirrored pillars. 2 minutes later, another charge, Harborview parking. On her card. Breath went thin. It wasn't a smoking gun, not by itself. People meet for drinks in hotel lobbies. People park. People forget to tell their husbands because they don't want to fight about nothing. And yet, I scrolled farther. A duplicate time stamp sat like a mirror. The ex had once shown me his habit of consolidating cards. Every Friday, his banking app pinged her phone like a cuckoo clock. I texted her, "Do you still get his weekly notifications?" She replied almost immediately, "Not anymore." Why? I typed and deleted 3 times, then sent. What about last winter? Harborview week of my birthday? A blinking ellipsis. Then, after a pause that rearranged my spine, yes. He told me he was networking. Why? I didn't answer. I forwarded her the statement line. Another pause. Then a screenshot landed in our thread, a fragment of his ledger from that week, a neat little row that read Harborview. Lobby at almost the exact minute as her charge. It could still be coincidence. People cross paths all the time. The world is a small town if you make it that way. I closed the laptop and stared at the ceiling. The apartment was quiet except for the soft thrum of the heater and the shower hissing down the hall. She was singing, absent-minded, the tune we used to hum when we cooked together in our first kitchen with the crooked stove. Warmth moved through me despite everything. A body answering a voice it has learned the shape of. Then the water shut off. Silence returned like a verdict. At lunch, I walked to the Harborview. The lobby smelled like polished wood and citrus. A woman in a blazer asked if I was checking in. I almost laughed. "Just meeting someone," I said, and drifted to the bar. The floor-to-ceiling windows framed the river like a painting. The bartender polished the same glass 3 times while talking about the wind. I didn't ask for receipts. I knew privacy would stop me at the door. Instead, I looked for the table from the balcony video, a corner booth with a view and just enough shadow to believe in privacy. I sat there for a long time with water and a notebook that stayed closed. On my way out, the parking garage swallowed me with the sweet exhaust smell of other people's errands. I wasn't sure what I hoped to find. Some ledger of license plates sorted by regret. What I found, taped crooked to a support beam near the exit, was a maintenance checklist with dates and times signed by a board attendant. The day of my birthday week had a note beside the evening slot. Camera 4 reset, lobby feed glitch. Useless. Or maybe it explained why no one had seen what I now knew. Back home, the ex had sent one more message. He used to brag that lobby bars are neutral ground. No one feels guilty sitting there. Attached was a photo I might have missed if she hadn't circled it. A reflection, faint and accidental, in the black gloss of a tabletop. A pendant I recognized, bright as a confession against a dark field. No faces. Just the small, specific shine of the chain I'd clasped for her on a morning that had felt simple. I saved everything in notes. Then I sat at the edge of the bed and listened to my life breathe. When she came in, towel wound high, steam clinging to her skin, desire leapt at the same speed as dread. She caught me staring and gave a half-smile that reached my ribs before my head. She crossed the room, the towel slipping just enough to make gravity and memory and wanting merge. Her knee brushed mine. Her hand found my neck. Heat slid under my skin, clean and fierce, the way it used to when we didn't need luck. "I want us," she whispered, lips close. "I'm trying." I cupped her face. "Then tell me what happened the week of my birthday." She went very still. 1 beat. 2. The room didn't move. "What do you mean?" "Harborview," I said. "Lobby bar. Parking." The pendant in a reflection. I kept my voice even, the way a surgeon holds a scalpel. Was it a coincidence? Her eyes glassed and cleared like a windshield in rain. "We met," she said at last, each word careful. "He dropped off a book. We talked. I was upset about everything. I shouldn't have gone. Did you kiss him? Silence. The word hung like a swing with no child, creaking in wind you can't feel. She didn't say no. How far did it go? I asked. My throat felt raw and my voice stayed soft. I need the truth, not the version that protects me. She closed her eyes, and when she opened them, she looked like a person walking out of a building she had set on fire. We kissed, she said. Once. She shook her head. It was a bad idea. I left. I came home and pretended nothing had happened, and I hated myself for how easy pretending was. The admission landed with both hands. I felt it, and I believed it, and I also felt the edge of disbelief waiting like an extra chair at the table. Did you meet again? Her jaw tightened. Not like that. Like what? Texts. Coffee. Lines I told myself weren't lines. She swallowed. He wanted more. I said no. I thought saying no made me loyal. It didn't. It made me sneaky. A heat moved through me that wasn't attraction and wasn't pure anger either. It was grief with teeth. I stood, not to leave, just to have legs that remembered how. She reached for me, then let her hand fall before it found anything. I'm telling you because you asked, she said. Not because he deserves to win. He doesn't, I said. He never did. We stood in the hush that follows a name spoken too loudly in a church. Every part of me wanted to pull her against me and hold on until every version of us that had wandered back toward the harbor view faded. Another part of me wanted to archive notes, call a lawyer, and become a man who doesn't wait for storms to pass. Between the two, a third path formed. Finish what I'd started, not with whispers and screenshots, but with a complete sentence that didn't ask for interpretation. She took a step forward. What happens now? Now, I said, we stop pretending this is a triangle that can hold. I'm going to present the truth to the people who need to see it. Your parents, our friends, him. And then I'm going to decide whether to keep building with someone who will never again call that night a coincidence. Her eyes filled and didn't spill. If I ask you not to destroy me, I won't destroy you, I said. I will destroy the story he used to make you doubt me. I exhaled slow. And if the truth also destroys us, then it's not me doing the work. Night pressed against the windows. She stood there in my towel, a woman I loved and a choice I didn't. Attraction throbbed uselessly, a beautiful animal that doesn't understand locks. I kissed her forehead once, not a pardon, not a promise, just a mark that said I was here. Then I opened notes and turned proof into a plan. The second twist wasn't thunder anymore. It was the ground itself, cracked and honest. Tomorrow, everyone would see where we had been walking. The morning I chose an ending, the sky was sharp blue. I brewed coffee, opened notes, and turned threads into a rope, not to choke a life, but to hold when the pulling started. I invited a Sunday check-in, my wife's parents, 2 mutual friends, his ex, and him. The message read like a calendar reminder. No drama. Just, it's time we all talk. The night before, my wife stood in the doorway, hair loose, bare feet on wood. You don't have to do this, she said. When she stepped closer, the heat of her skin reached me first. My body remembered a song. I do, I said. I can't live inside his version of me anymore. She set her palms on my chest. For a breath, I wanted to let our bodies argue for us, to drown in something warm and easy. I kissed her forehead instead, a goodbye to the part of us that thought could fix truth. Sunday, I set chairs in a circle. When the bell rang, I didn't feel brave. I felt ready. They came with the faces people wear to funerals and interventions. He strolled in last, smile bright, hands open, auditioning for magnanimous. My wife sat opposite me, eyes rimmed red. I kept my voice level. I'm going to show a sequence, I said. No commentary until the end. I mirrored my screen. The balcony clip first, 20 seconds that said everything. Then screenshots, spark, the pendant reflection, the neutral ground line, the harbor view statement. The note about the lobby camera glitch. The message with the heart contact. I'm thinking about the fallout. Dates and times lined up, not to hurt, but to stop lies from sliding through seams. He tried to laugh. You're really doing this? Over a kiss? Over jokes? His ex answered. Over a pattern, she said. You make yourself the cure for wounds you cause. I closed the folder. I'm not asking for a vote, I said. You humiliated me for sport. You used my marriage as cover for your ego. You told her comfort was a cage while you shopped for a key you could wear. He leaned forward for a last gamble. You're making me the villain to avoid your own boredom. Maybe I was boring, I said. I wasn't cruel. My wife spoke, hoarse but clear. We kissed, she said to the room. I bent boundaries and let attention replace courage. That's on me. She turned to me. I'm sorry. The apology landed clean. It didn't fix anything, but it kept me from hating her. I've made my decision, I said, feeling the words settle like a bridge. I'm filing for divorce. I won't drag anyone through court unless they make me, but I won't pretend we can patch a wall that won't hold the house. My wife closed her eyes. A single tear found her chin. Her father nodded once. His ex looked relieved in a way that had nothing to do with me. He tried one last line. You're going to blow up your life because you couldn't take a joke? Jokes have a cost, I said. You've been paying with other people's dignity. I opened the door. You can go now, I told him. And you won't come back. If you try, this folder stops being a living room thing. For a second I saw another version of him. Smaller, unlit by an audience. He left without slamming the door. After everyone drifted out, the apartment felt like a theater after the lights come up. My wife and I stood with nothing between us but the rug and the years. I loved you, she said. Not past tense to wound, just the truth. I loved you too, I said. Maybe I still do. But I love the part of me that wanted kindness more than spectacle. I'm going to keep him. She reached, then let her hand fall. I hope you find better. I already did, I said, surprising myself with the gentleness. I found me. That night, I packed a bag with quiet practical things. I slept on the couch, not as punishment, but because the bed still smelled like the life we had, and I needed a new scent for the first morning. When I turned out the lamp, the room held a calm I hadn't trusted in months. Outside, the city moved on with its own private truths. Inside, I counted breaths until they matched something steady. On my birthday, he raised a glass and told the room she could do better than me. Maybe she could. Maybe I could too. Either way, the toast doesn't belong to him anymore. It belongs to the man who learned the difference between being patient and being quiet. I didn't win. I didn't lose. I ended a story that was killing me, and I did it without becoming the kind of person he needed me to be. That was my revenge, and it was enough.